Thank you so much for being here. First of all, how are you and how has your day
Uh,
been?
Oh, it's been lovely. It's been a rich day, busy, and not bad.
So, I first wanted to congratulate you on, publishing such an amazing book. Like, I really enjoyed reading The Dragonfly Sea. Um,
Uh, thank you
it,
for
it,
that.
it was really, really good. I also wanted to ask how it feels to be the December author for One Read and like what's it been like being a part of One Read?
Oh, it's been amazing. The response has been tremendous. Yeah, what I love is that it's opened mm, worlds to readers. My old readers, and it's attracted its brand of readers as well. Since it was also translated into German. I think the first question that what's been very interesting. The first question had been, "Does Pate Island actually exist?" And so it's been a lot of fun, kind of unveiling, pushing back a veil to this amazing space, and I think what has been very moving for me mostly is that certainly the Nigerian my Nigerian people, my Nigerian readers themselves have expressed not just an interest but a determination to visit both Lamu and Pate, inspired of course by the story, but the idea of a site of African history and memory that resonates way back to the before, becomes meaningful even to them. So yeah, that part particularly I love.
That's great. Yeah. And
Mm.
I also wanted to ask, what's it been like beyond this book? What's it been like adopting as a writer during COVID, and like how you still connect with your readers?
Mm. To be honest, the COVID season has been a kind of blessing. Is it polite? Is it polite to say that? And for us who are actual introverts, we are fake extroverts. It's been blissful. I've got a younger sister who called the COVID season Owuorisk. That's our last name, Owuor. We're kind of people who love the the kind of stillness, of quietness, of not of fewer obligations to socialize. And this time we've got justifications, COVID. So, but there's it's been a rich time, frankly, of stillness, of solitude, of looking, inner reflection, of reading quite a lot, and in my case, also watching a lot, catching up on a lot of Korean drama. Um, my excuse is that it's inspiration for new story. So yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely taken this period to just like try new things since we've been home all the time. But um, so I wanted to talk about, so you talked a bit about the background of the book and Pay Island, and I also wanted to ask you if you needed to do like any extensive research related to
Mm,
the like
mm, mm.
yeah, the history behind the book.
The history behind the book. Well, I'd spent some time in Zanzibar, and that was kind of mind blowing in that a lot of my own assumptions about what is Africa and where does Africa begin or end were just exploded by the inhabiting Zanzibar as a territory, but also as an idea. And part of that included having lunch in one of my favorite restaurants there, which was run by a person, a Zanzibari of Chinese origin, who was a fourth generation Zanzibari. And encountering these histories of the in between that hadn't been amplified or had been kind of written over. And when I was in Zanzibar at that time, it did not necessarily figure much in my imagination until this kind of story, inspired by the question of what does China's return to Africa, and certainly Eastern Africa, mean for the intimate and personal histories. Part of that was motivated by my resistance to the narrative that was being put forward that, China is the new colonizer, yeah, as if the Chinese return is similar to the European invasion of the late 19th actually it had been ongoing, but particularly of the late 19th century, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was also struck by the absences of the African narrative, the kind of the framing of the African story or responsiveness about the meaning of this new cultural presence among us, right? Given that the figures of the what you call the new African citizens, the largest applications of new African citizenships right across the continent come from those of Chinese origin, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What implication does that have for our future? So yeah, that might have been the question that I went with, but then going into the island, remembering the Zanzibar experiences, also recalling my own passion for the ocean, and my sense of belonging, a greater sense of my own belonging to this continent is rooted very much in our oceans. But then also discovering that in history and in geography, especially as framed in the West, there's this strange narrative of where an African encounters the ocean, their encounter of the ocean is constrained and limited to cargo on somebody else's boat, or as the artisanal fisherman, just kind of frolicking on the seashore. The deep histories and stories and poetry and naming and connections of trade, of history, and our own both imagination and agency over the waters had all but, and you run into the text and it's all but been erased, right? So that then becomes part of my own inquiry in terms of the why did that happen? And part of the most significant point of erasure, of course, was the renaming of the waters. What we call the Indian Ocean was only called the Indian Ocean from the what we call it, from the 17th century, and it was linked to an Englishman's fantasy of reaching India. But they're all the incredible stories and names for these particular waters, African names and African histories and stories linked to those waters. So these little elements just kind of came together, and at the heart of it is also the story of Muammar Sharifu, the girl from Pate Island, who in 2005 was in a way returned to China after as almost like a 600-year-old footnote to a mystery, an old mystery. So through blood tests, the confirmation of what Pate Island had always said, that some of them are descendants of Chinese sailors that survived a storm linked to their great admiral, Zheng He. And it was such a significant story that I think most of the continent missed. Certainly the Kenyan media missed its implication. In a way, so this story, the Dragonfly Sea, draws on all these elements to tell the story of a little girl living on this little island that's almost invisible to the world, but has an oversized impact on the world. This is where the war on terror begins. This is also where, if you want, the Chinese story also begins. Yeah, so that's all these things come together. Yes, yeah.
And did you do any research specifically with the different languages that you incorporated into the story?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of history, and I guess history I treat it very much as a palette, to the annoyance of some historians. But history is my palette, and a lot. Yes, I interacted, involved myself with both the fishermen and boatmen and boat captains. The languages, of course, so of course Swahili is very much Kiswahili is very much the language, frankly the language, the lingua franca of these seas, which is another story that has been erased. So in a way, yeah. So there's a lot of that, and the editing process, because as you noticed, there are I think 7 languages there. That then becomes the work of my editor and copy editor and line editors. Yes.
Yeah, and for the Swahili, like the different Swahili proverbs that you put, yeah, before some of the chapters, like how did you choose which proverbs to put where, and like which one stood out to you?
No, these are actually taken from there's a Kenyan fabric called leso, also known as kanga. And the kanga, it's incredible. It's not just a piece of textile. Every piece has a story, designs, and what is very significant about it is the aphorism attached to it. So I use the kanga sayings. But what ties a lot of these sayings is the idea of the ocean and the water, and Swahili relationships with the waters. So of course there may be a few deviations, but primarily those were the choices of the evidence, that textual as well as the narrative evidence of long-term relationships of the East African coast with the waters.
Yeah, and also like speaking with the ocean and how that kind of like was the connector, I guess, for everything. I was gonna ask what led you to integrate like the sea as the main metaphor, and how did you maintain like that like storytelling throughout the book?
Sea as metaphor. I was always going to write an ode to the ocean because it's no secret anymore that I'm an ocean haunted, I'm a sea haunted city dweller. There's not a single day when I'm not longing for the Swahili Sea, longing to be close to it. And that has been part of my identity ever since I met the sea when I was about 6-7 years old. I met the sea for the first time, and I'd never seen anything more splendid in my existence. So there was always going to be in the telling of, in part of my own artistic journey, there was always going to be an ode to the sea, and maybe this is not going to be the only one. But the telling of the story of China's return, and when I started writing the book, I wasn't thinking of it as China's return. I was very much of the school of thought that was going around at that time, that this was a kind of imposition. It's the book and research that invited me into the understanding of this as a return, and a continuation of an old story. Actually, it's not just a 600-year-old story. When you go to Pate, you understand it's probably a 1,000-year-old story, right? And I guess what happens was, and it's a story of the sea, because also China is the Belt Road Initiative is very much linked to a kind of a contemporary interpretation of old trade routes. But all the trade routes were centered around the ocean, and particularly the Western Ocean. What they call the Western Ocean, what others call the Indian Ocean, our Swahili seas, right? And these become the very central point. And also the truth was that, the final voyage that underpins the story of Admiral Zheng He, the Chinese admiral that passed by this part of the world, his last voyage, before, the one where he lost a third of his sailors, some of those that ended up on this Pate Island, was also coincided with China's turning its back on the ocean. And if China had not turned its back on the oceans, on the seas, the history of the world and the history of the continent would have been a very different history. And I think looking at kind of reading the text of Xi Jinping, the current Chinese premier, and his constant references to the seas and the certainty that they will never turn their backs on the seas, I think there's some clues there. I knew I had to talk about these oceans, and certainly the oceans, the Indian Ocean, the Western Ocean, the Swahili Seas have become very central, I think, even in the reshaping of world geopolitics. And yeah, so I think that there's kind of like there's a kind of historical political message there, a wandering there, and at the heart of it is the desire to ask my fellow Africans to look again at the oceans and its implication for our future.
Yeah. So with those implications, like what would you say is the main message that you hope readers take away from it?
Hmm. You know, I don't think I'm the kind of artist that wants to pass on a message to readers or anything. But but as a kind of thinker and thinker from the African continent, I think just maybe one or let's say 3 points is one is what is it that we want from the new relationship with China. We haven't defined that yet, but we need to do that. That was one. Second thing was that the depth and the breadth of our own histories are among us, but won't be for long. Do we have people? Do we have anybody who is willing to go into these spaces, like Party Island, for example? And there are examples dotted right across the our continent, to go into the places of the in-between and to pick up what remains of the stories of our long histories, right? Our histories do not start with colonialism, and to do so limits and constrains the extent of our own dreaming. I think that's the second point. And the third point is that I think the idea of where does Africa, where does it go? I think it points to the question of the African imagination. What do we imagine of our seas? What do we imagine for and of our waters? The world is tilting towards these oceans, the Swahili Seas. What is our stake, and are we even thinking about it?
Yeah. And I guess within the talking about the characters of the book, I wanted to ask what your inspiration was behind Munira's character, and specifically her predicament
Yeah.
with her scandal and like her being used as a warning. So just the inspiration behind that whole, I guess, storyline.
Oh, Munira, I guess first sometimes you don't know where characters come from; they just show up, and your job is my job as the artist is to honor the one that shows up and to follow her life. So so there's that that comes from the realm of the unknown. But Munira is partly inspired by the incredible women I've encountered in my life, but certainly the name is a tribute to my deputy when I was working as the executive director of the Zanzibar International Film Festival. Her name was Munira. She was an exceptional woman in her own right. But yeah, she's a composite of so many women that I've encountered. And then she's her own self as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I could give you an inspired answer. Yes, I thought her. I structured her. I dreamt it. No. She appeared.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's okay. That's a very great answer. Like, and she was definitely like an example of a powerful woman. So I definitely see that. But I also wanted to ask about the development of Ayana and Muhyiddin's relationship. especially in like the first,
Muhide.
yeah, the first 100 pages, and like that slow development towards uh their relationship now.
Mm. In what way? What struck you? And
Um,
maybe I can address that.
uh, I guess it was just Ayana's like she was very forthcoming when they first interacted, and then I feel like he slowly it was I felt like it was a gradual development. Like it wasn't, even though Ayana was very forthcoming, there
Mm.
the development of the relationship was pretty gradual within the first few chapters. So I just wanted to ask about like building that up.
Mm. Mm. Again, I guess it's about, I guess it's about also story trajectory, trusting the story to show the direction that the author as amanuensis takes. Again, I can't say I wanted it that way, or demanded that it go that way, but that was the, I guess that was the running after Ayana and saying, okay, how is this going to go? Understanding later on, oh, okay, well, she's looking for her father. She's looking for a father. And she appoints a father because she appoints Muhyiddin as her father. Um, and it's up to him to come to terms with the fact that he has been chosen. Uh, you know, everything that Ayana represents everything that he's not interested in and had run away from. You know, the commitment, the fatherhood, responsibility. So yeah, so she, of course, so he has to struggle with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were writing the Dragonfly Sea, did you ever need to challenge your personal perspectives or like any personal beliefs to write any
Oh,
parts of it?
oh yeah, of course, all the time. But I remember my late friend Binyavanga telling me that writers have got a free will. Get the hell out of the way of your story. So those exhortations kind of, kept me kind of in the straight and narrow story wise. I had a different idea of what Ayana's life story would be. For example, the Turkish guy, Kore, I thought he was going to be the main presence in her life. And Lin what's his name? Jinlai becomes something like, it's almost, I don't know if you're a writer as well, when a character kind of takes over and becomes something that you do not want him to become. um, and then when that happens, I thought the Turk had disappeared, but then he shows up again, um, in this kind of almost villainous form, but he represents the he's a tribute to all girls and women who have made the wrong choice. um, uh, Temporarily, but yeah, he and when she goes with him, I stopped writing because I wanted her to not do that. I was judging her. Really. I really was judging her. So I wanted to push her in this other direction in the story. And what happens in my case, when I'm in the artistic space or writing space, when I'm not being honest, when I'm not being faithful to the story, the muse disappears, the story dries up, everything goes away. And that's exactly what happened. So I had to come back and just trust the story anyway, trust the process of the story. Yeah. So yeah, that's what happens. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. Those were all
Mm-hmm.
the questions I had today. I know that you have a very busy schedule, so I don't want to keep you too long, but
Oh no, don't worry. It's always such a pleasure, Aisha.
it
Always
was
such a
very,
pleasure
very
to
nice to meet you. And
engage. And even in the questions, I'm thinking, oh, so that's what happened.
thank
Yeah,
you so much.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah. It's such a pleasure. Mm.
have a great day, and again, thank
Oh, and you too.
thank you. Bye.
Okay. Okay, okay. Yeah, bye, dear. Take care, and all the best with everything,
Thank you
with
so much.
life.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.